Hello and welcome. Today I want to talk about the CYBERchamp LITE. This is a custom-made Swiss Army knife, and it's my first custom-made one. I had some help making the CYBERchamp LITE with my father. It was a two-man operation as I don't have too many automated tools or a drill press. It was quite the journey to make this tool. I had to break apart three different types of models: the Swiss Champ, the Huntsman LITE, and the Cybertool 34. These three different Swiss Army knives helped me make the CYBERchamp LITE. Now, the CYBERchamp LITE is basically the same as a Swiss Champ, except that I add a Cybertool bit exchanger inside of it. So it has all the other tools that you would find in a Swiss Champ. I've always wanted something that had the Cybertool LITE tools, in addition to having a file and also having a saw in it, which would be a great multi-use tool for me. So I came up with the CYBERchamp LITE here. Here on the table we have the CYBERchamp LITE. Let's go over the tools here. We have the small pin blade. We have the larger pin blade. Then we have the file, three-sided file here. We have the wood saw. We have the ruler, fish descaler. And we also have the scissors here. And then we have the Cybertool with all the bits inside of it. The default bits you would get in a Cybertool 34 and the bit holder. We have the light module. We have the magnifying glass. We have the pliers here with the needle nose portion, the regular portion, and the wire crimper here, and a very small wire cutter in the center. Then we have our can opener slotted screwdriver. And then we also have our bigger slotted screwdriver and a bottle cap lifter and a wire stripper bender. On the scale tools we have the ballpoint pen. And in place of the toothpick we have a ferrous seam rod. Then we also have our slotted screwdriver in the corkscrew. And next to the corkscrew here, we have our small pin. On the back layer, we have our small slotted screwdriver or chisel point. Next to it, we have our smaller slotted screwdriver without a chisel point. We have our hook. And finally, in the last back layer, we have our awl with the sewing eyelet inside of it. On the other side, we have our tweezers here. And then we have the keyring hook here and a small amount of cordage. So that is the CYBERchamp LITE, all the tool sets. Making the CYBERchamp LITE was very challenging. We had to break apart three different types of tools. We had to break apart a Swiss Champ, a Huntsman LITE, and a Cybertool 34. And the process was we had to take off the scales and remove the brass pins. And by doing that, we had to drill them out, and we needed both 2.5 millimeter sets of brass rods and also 2.2 millimeter sets of brass rods. Now, when you go to take these out, the brass pins inside the tool, there's little collars around it, and if you're not careful, you can actually break those, and then you'll be out of the brass little collars that hold the brass in it. So it was quite the process, and trying to remember how to put together everything back in order was also a process. This being our first time putting it together. As you can see, the method in which you put the brass rods in also matters. Our first attempt, we bent the brass rods a little bit, so we had to recut and then apply the tool together again to get it to be more straightened out. And we also had to draw on a diagram on a piece of paper to kind of line up which springs go with what and which liners. That's these aluminum liners that go in between the layers. It's very important that you have that down exactly for each tool. So if you're ever going to do any kind of modifications, what I recommend is taking a picture of a lot of befores and a lot of durings and a lot of afters, just so you have for a record of where each liner would go to. For example, on this portion of the CYBERchamp LITE, I forgot to put the other V-notch liner in, and I put another one that fit in there. And there's a slight difference in thickness. And because of that, this little part here on the plier head came up against the slotted screwdriver and can opener portion here. So it didn't quite fit together properly, so I had to redo it again and take it apart and find the actual liner layer, which is a V-notch one here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but basically it's the same thickness as the other one, and it matches up and provides just enough clearance and tolerance to go past that without hitting it, if at all. So there's minor things like that when it comes to putting together a custom Swiss Army knife. What was really useful was having a lot of other types of models on hand for references, for comparisons. For example, I could compare to see how this would fit against the slotted or the Phillips head side if I wanted to do that, or the magnifying glass side, for example, or to see what liners went where next to what. And it was a good reference basically to have another extra Swiss Champ model, a Huntsman Lite model, or a Cybertool model in some cases, and even the Tinkerer Deluxe, which I had on hand, which I kind of figured out how to do the pliers against this other layer. So it did come in handy quite a lot. And overall, it took about a week or so to kind of fine tune it and test it out. One of the other harder parts was when making this is the peening of the brass rods. It takes quite a lot of time to kind of dial it in. And by that I mean, when you go to peen the tool, what I found was pretty useful was extending the outer layer tools like this in these positions, so that when I go to peen the brass, it peens evenly against the tool, so it's not like getting kind of crushed in, if you will, on the outer liners. So that was important to kind of learn and figure that out. And it's not the perfect job. And what I also learned is if you tighten it too much on the vise, you can kind of like deform your scale. So you want to be careful of that as well. So you just want to get some kind of average pressure to put them together, and it should fit. And these scales don't always last a long time. After many uses, they do get loose, so you only have a limited amount of time of putting on scales and taking them off of your Victorinox. But overall, it took a while to dial in each side and get it just the right amount of tightness so you can feel it in the tool when you snap it back and bring it out. What's a good test is I would test the wobble in it, see if there's any play, and if there wasn't any play, I knew I was getting close to it just being the right amount of tightness for the tool. You don't want to make it too tight or too loose. You want to make it just about right when it comes to peening the brass rods in and tightening it down. And once again, you have to be careful about the bushings or the collars. You don't want to break them or get them too peened down too, because then they won't fit in the slots of the scales. So I went ahead and kept the older scales on it, the ones that got deformed and broken, because I use my Victorinoxes and the scales are going to get torn up and broken, and I figure I'll save the newer scales for another time. But it was a good learning experience, and I think I feel more confident now in taking apart future Victorinox knives and playing around and customizing them. It would have been nice to have some kind of titanium or kind of copper type of scales here, plus scales, but maybe that's for the future, a different add-on. But overall, it works fairly well. Everything's snappy. There's no looseness to it, and it's pretty much my dream type of Swiss Army knife. It has all the tools that I want. It has the light module along with a pair of pliers, the file, the saw, the scissors, mainly, and that's what I was looking for. The Cybertool didn't quite reach that part. It was just missing the file and the saw. If it had those two options, the Cybertool, I would have been pretty happy with it. I had looked into getting the Expedition Lite, which is very hard to find in the United States, but it also costs a lot of money, and didn't quite have the pliers, which is what I was looking for in a light module. So I pretty much use the SwissChamp here in place of that if I wanted pliers and with the utility of the Cybertool almost. So that was taking up a slot for a while. In comparison to the CYBERchamp LITE here, we have the SwissChamp. You can kind of see the difference in the thickness and the layering and whatnot. So, and then I have the Cybertool LITE here. We can compare that real quick. So here's the CYBERchamp LITE, and you can see the Cybertool LITE's quite thinner than the CYBERchamp LITE. And if I can fit this in a frame here, so from top to bottom we have the CYBERchamp LITE, Cybertool LITE, and the SwissChamp. So these two tools basically melded together to make this top tool, although we did use 3 tools to make this top tool: the SwissChamp, the Cybertool 34, which we don't have here, and the Huntsman LITE, which we also don't have here. I had to break apart 3 different tools to make the CYBERchamp LITE. I think my next mod will probably be a SwissChamp LITE, which would basically take this CYBERchamp layer out, and or Cybertool layer out, and basically put it in a small Phillips head screwdriver in place of it, and I think a small type of wrench would fit in that layer where the magnifying housing is in, so we can kind of make it a little bit thinner and not as techy as the CYBERchamp LITE here. Overall, it was a fun project, and I learned a lot about it, and I thought I'd share that with you guys. Let me know what you think, what kind of models you would want, or what kind of custom models you think you could use in your own EDC uses. I've been using this for about a week and a half, and I wanted to make the videos sooner, but I've been pretty sick, and my voice isn't the best for speaking right now. But I thought I'd share that with you guys and show you kind of the process and a little bit of how we kind of took it apart and put it together. This is fairly interesting for someone who hasn't done the modification. It can be quite challenging, especially if you don't have a pair of extra hands to help you. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your day.